This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto inherited the power of the Lost Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Before the age of ninjas, before men had the ability to control chakra, before the cataclysm, men were just common creatures. To the ancient men, chakra was another name for magic. The sorceress's death meant that men could not control the exotic forces, at least not without the assistance of the ancient elementals of the world, the guardian forces. The world was left in ruins, and the powers of the elementals were transformed into a malevolent entity known to men as the Ten-tailed Beast, a powerful world walker who terrorized the land and claimed millions of lives. The age of science came to an end, and stories about the elementals gradually faded. The rest of the story is then well known to all ninjas. The age of ninjas began when the Sage of the Six Paths was born, following the so-called Great Cataclysm. Humans were transformed, gaining the ability to control their own chakra, and some were further transformed, gaining bloodline abilities. The Sage of the Six Paths gathered all those who were worthy and taught them how to use their new abilities in this world. An accounting of the history of the world, by the Sage of Origin, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Northern Lightning Country's Hirosu Hills. It took a lot of effort to carefully dig through the ancient ruins in the far north of Lightning Country, especially since the majority of the region was a scorching desert. Tashiro would have believed he was in Wind Country if he had not known any different. He smiled at what he discovered after his shovel struck something hard, and he carefully reached down to smooth the sand away. In his hands rolled a tiny round ball of crystal that was most likely a chakra gem. Even though ancient ruins were known to contain significant amounts of chakra gems, their rarity made them even more valuable. It seems that the ancients made extensive use of chakra gems for some unidentified uses that have since been forgotten. Prior to the apocalypse, chakra gems were extremely conductive and many had unique characteristics. The treasure hunters made a good living by searching the ancient ruins, excavating them, and selling them to different armor or weapon makers so they could make expensive armor or weapons for ninjas and rich lords. Tashiro looked at the tiny chakra gem orb in his hand, observing the blue-green crystal's gentle green, blue glow. He laughed. The chakra gem in his hand was probably one with unique properties that would cost the smiths a lot more, so it was a good day to be him. A weird sensation passed over him just as he was ready to throw the gem into the heap of artifacts he had unearthed beside him, and as though he had just woken up from a deep slumber, Tashiro blinked. His desire to sell the chakra gem was mysteriously swept away as he gazed at its orb with fresh eyes. Distractedly, Tashiro pocketed the blue-green orb and murmured to himself, "What a lovely piece of chakra gem. I should keep it as a lucky charm. I wonder why I thought to sell this lovely piece of gemstone anyway." Tashiro picked up his shovel and went to work, within the elemental ore's orbit. The length of his sleep was unknown to him. He felt dreadfully frail, a pathetic shadow of his former self. He was barely able to survive on the elemental essence he possessed. Even though he had few senses, they were sufficient to awaken him when a human touched the elemental ore that served as both his home and prison. He was astounded by the state of the world after accessing the man's memories in a matter of seconds and analyzing his body in a matter of minutes. Men now have magic inside of them. In this new world, they seem to call it chakra. Even the treasure hunter who had discovered him had the ley lines of magic in his body, but he couldn't use them. In addition to shattering the Guardian Force's abilities, the destruction of the elemental plane long ago turned men into magical beings. Recalling the ten-tailed horror that had developed from the destructive energies following the breakup of the elemental plane, he shuddered. He recalled how the powered and weakened Guardian forces had been hunted down and devoured by the mindless elemental god. The Guardian forces were powerless to stop the beast. Their only option was to leave humanity to its fates and go into hiding, distributing their very essence throughout the world in junction systems or elemental ores in the hopes that at least some of it would survive the ten-tailed beast's purge. All that had survived was his essence in this elemental ore, which was now in the possession of a treasure hunter. Whether any of his fellow elementals made it through the purge was unknown to him. He used what little magic he had left to change the treasure hunter's memories in order to prevent the destruction of his home and prison. Rather, the same man who had dug him out would keep him safe. He awoke and scanned the treasure hunter's memories of the tailed beasts. Although the treasure hunter was unaware of the ten-tailed beast that had wiped out the world, there were now 9 in total. The treasure hunter is also clueless as to the location of those tailed creatures. However, it was well known that all of these 9-tailed creatures were imprisoned within both people and things. Rumor had it that Cloud Village itself was home to 2-tailed beasts that were imprisoned inside 2 individuals whose identities were kept secret from those outside the village. Each of these merits further research. The 10-tailed beast that emerged from the devastation of the elemental planes may have been related to these 9-tailed creatures. He might not be able to regain his full powers until he discovered what they were and how they were sealed. With a little magic manipulation, a new memory was added to the one that was now protecting him. After 5 years, Konoha Barrio, a chubby merchant who had been drawn to Konoha, rolled the chakra gem orb in his hand. Another of his merchant acquaintances gave him the chakra gem, which was his lucky stone. Ever since then, he had owned it. He had been feeling uneasy ever since he got to Konoha, and he had started to wander the crowded streets while holding the chakra gem. He had the impression that he was searching for something, but he was unsure of what it was. When he saw a flash of blonde hair, Barrio felt compelled to advance and seize the young boy in front of him by the shoulders. With an exclamation of surprise, the boy spun around, his blue eyes staring at Barrio in disbelief, his cheeks marked with whiskers emphasizing how different he was from other kids his age. Barrio's hand, which was holding the chakra gem, spontaneously moved and pressed it into the boy's palm. Then he turned and started to leave. Before his thoughts calmed and he regained consciousness, he had passed a number of blocks of shophouses. First and foremost, he wondered why in the world he had traveled to Konoha. The second was the sensation that he had just lost something important, but he was unable to remember what it was. Konoha's streets 11-year-old Uzumaki Naruto, an orphan, had spent the previous 6 years living alone. Allowing a 5-year-old to live alone was likely cruel, but Konoha's orphanages had refused to accept him back once he had shown that he could support himself. Naruto was accustomed to the villagers' hostility toward him. Only the elderly Hokage, Tuchi, the owner of the ramen stall, and his daughter Ayame were genuinely kind to him. Early on, he had discovered that he could either smile at the world or weep at its unfairness, and perhaps a few practical jokes. The elderly proprietor of the grocery store on Oak Pine Street, for example, was going to be taken aback when he eventually opened his establishment. Naturally, the grumpy old man should not have initially charged Naruto twice the usual price for 2 cartons of sour milk. The orange paint from his most recent trick was still on his hands. As Naruto considered returning home to wash everything off, he was abruptly seized from behind. When a red-faced, large-bellied man glared down at him and pressed something round into his hand, he jerked his head around and his eyes widened in shock. Then, without turning around, the man just walked away. For a few dazed seconds, Naruto kept staring after the man before a tingling sensation in his hand made him glance down at the object he was now holding. It was some kind of lovely round crystal that was glowing green. His skin seemed to absorb some of the light. Naruto shivered as a cold feeling passed over him. Naruto held up the glowing crystal stone and exclaimed, "What in the world is this?" He questioned why the man had initially given it to him. He shrugged after a time. Since the man was clearly not returning and the crystal ball was attractive, he might as well keep it. He put it in his pocket and headed home, within the elemental ore's orbit. He realized his protracted search was over as soon as his carrier landed in the ninja town of Konoha. In some parts of the village, a faint mist of elemental the reality hung undisturbed. In order to restore a meager portion of his initial strength, he had managed to control his carrier like a starving beast, forcing him to travel to the locations where he could absorb the thin layer of ethereal essence in the air. After wandering this new world for 5 years, he used his carriers to control them and delve into old legends to learn more about the fate of the 10-tailed beast that had destroyed the Guardian forces. The mindless elemental god appeared to have been sealed away centuries ago by a formidable ninja known as the Sage of the Sixth Path. In order to prevent the mindless elemental god from ever having the opportunity to change, he had divided the elemental god into 9 smaller parts with the death of the sage. Hunting down the tailed beast's human containers had required a lot of work, and he had to use a lot of his remaining magic. He had discovered and visited the human containers of the 3-tailed and 8-tailed beasts, and discovered that they shared the 10-tailed beast's ability to absorb elemental essence. He had been able to witness instances in which the 3-tailed's container had drawn on its chakra by using his then-human carrier. His feeble senses were able to inform him that, similar to what had happened to the other Guardian forces when the 10-tailed beast roamed the world, he would be absorbed into the tailed beast if its chakra touched his raw essence. Since all that remained of his essence was this tiny spark trapped in the elemental ore, he realized that he would truly die if he were absorbed by any of the tailed beasts that now inhabit this world. In this regard, he found no use for the seal rays that contained the power of the tailed beasts, which were used to seal away the 3-tailed and 8-tailed beasts. He was able to use his acute senses to decipher the natural mechanisms of the magical seals on the human containers of the tailed and ate. Tailed beasts because he was an elemental force. That his plan to reclaim his true power and essence would not be aided by the seal arrays on the human containers was a great disappointment. Back then, he had traversed the globe, searching for the other tailed beasts containers and switching human carriers like a second skin. The human containers for the 7th, 5th, and 4th tailed beasts were all the same, but he had seen and felt them. The chakra of the tailed beasts was free to circulate throughout their bodies due to the seal arrays that kept them inside their human containers. He would die if the hands of the human containers touched his elemental ore. His desire to extract the ethereal essence from the tailed beasts by means of the magical sealing techniques developed by humans in this generation appeared to be a far-off dream. Before arriving in Konoha and finding the village's young tailed beast container, he had all but given up. He could feel the almost flawless magical seal enclosing one of the tailed beasts inside the boy's body as soon as his human carrier had gotten close to him. In order to transform the tailed beast's chakra into a less dangerous form and enable it to combine with the boy's own, the seal continuously extracted a tiny amount of it into the boy's body. Part magic, chakra, part ethereal energies, the 9-tailed beast was an elemental force, albeit a disruptive one. The boy's seal made it possible to safely transform the tailed beast's chakra into human chakra, but it did not explain the ethereal nature of the creature it drew out. As a result, the boy's body was filled with these ethereal energies, which eventually seeped into the atmosphere. That was why he had initially detected and ingested the haze of ethereal essence upon arriving in Konoha. The devastation of the elemental planes created the 10-tailed beast, an elemental god. It had the capacity to continuously produce ethereal energies, which are what keep the guardian forces alive. He discovered the ideal seal on a young human container that would enable him to feed on those energies, heal himself, and gradually increase his power. The 9 lesser-tailed beasts share these characteristics. There were flaws in the seal. When the boy was experiencing strong emotions, a magical hole, for a lack of words, allowed a lot of raw-tailed beast chakra to flow through his chakra pathways. Being close by when that occurred would have been fatal for him, but he was prepared to take the chance because he had his own plan. By leaving a tiny portion of their essence in a system that was made by humans and known as the Junction Systema, an artificial construct based on the structure of elemental aurea, the guardian forces would make a pact with a human in the past. As elemental beings, guardian forces could only exist physically in the now destroyed elemental planes or by occupying naturally occurring or artificially created elemental ores. Only the tailed beasts, who were able to maintain a solid form in the physical plane while producing ethereal essence on their own, were an exception. To make a pact with any of the guardian forces, some humans implanted junction systems, also known as elemental ores, into their bodies. In turn, the guardian forces would leave a tiny portion of their essence in their body's elemental ores. With the help of this tiny essence, humans would be able to summon the essence of the guardian force with which they had made a pact and acquire magical abilities. The young child had no human-made junction system, and he would never consent to having his present elemental ore home and prison implanted in him because there was simply too much chance that something would go wrong. However, the boy's seal transformed him into a perpetual source of ethereal energy. Splitting a tiny bit of his essence into the boy would be an easy task. The boy would produce ethereal energies that would allow his essence to remain in his body. He knew that if the boy tapped into the raw chakra of the tailed beast within him, the small portion of himself that he stored in the boy would be consumed, but he was willing to take the chance, especially since his essence in the boy allowed him to absorb the boy's constant flow of life sustaining energies. The strength of his main self would then increase as these energies were transferred to his main essence in the elemental ore. Somewhere secure would be the elemental ore that contained his original essence. He could always implant a new splinter of himself into the boy from his current home and prison if the boy lost control and tapped into the raw chakra of the tailed beast, killing his small essence within the boy. He would wait, he would discover more about this world, he would keep regaining his abilities. His siblings. He had been looking for them for 5 years and had not come across any evidence, until he regained the ability to save them. He hoped that at least some of them lived. After a year, Konoha, after the night's events, Naruto returned to his apartment feeling extremely exhausted and drained. He had failed the Genin test once more, and when his academy schoolteacher Mizuki offered a different method of passing the test, he foolishly believed the man. While Mizuki diverted the attention of the guards, Naruto was given the plans to steal Konoha's forbidden scroll. At the time, he was unaware that Mizuki was planning to use him as a scapegoat in order to take the forbidden scroll for himself. The night wasn't a waste, at least. In addition to learning the shadow clone technique, a potent ninjutsu, he also discovered the reason why nearly everyone detested him. For a moment, he was filled with mind-numbing fear because he was the human container of the nine-tailed fox. When Iruka, his academy school teacher, had shown him genuine concern and care when he had stood up for Naruto against Mizuki, that horror had swiftly subsided. In a shocking turn of events, Iruka gave Naruto the genin headband after he defeated Mizuki in combat. Naruto shut his apartment door and entered his room. Feeling inside for a concealed catch, he opened his drawer and it popped open. He produced a well-worn crystal ball that was glowing green as his hand closed around a round, hard orb. Naruto stumbled onto his bed and stared at the orb while holding it above his eye. Naruto told the crystal, "Today is one hell of a day." He would have felt a little foolish if someone had been around to hear him. He had developed the habit of expressing his feelings to the stone during the year following his acquisition of it. After all, it was a special stone to him, and he didn't have many people to talk to. He always felt more at ease after speaking to the stone, and occasionally he thought it understood what he was saying. Mizuki really tricked me. I guess I should not just believe everyone, even if they're teachers. Within the elemental ore's orbit, even though he already knew what had happened, he paid attention to the boy. The boy's essence had seen what was happening that night. He had found the boy to be a bundle of optimism during the year he had lived with him. He never gave up even when nearly everyone was against him. The youngster was a true shining example of humanity. Because he had been living alone for so long, Naruto may be a little rough around the edges. He would not have objected to making a pact with the boy if it had been the old days, and the child's heart was pure. He was still unsure about whether he should tell the boy who he was or stay a silent leech inside Naruto. However, that would not be genuinely equitable. In just 1 year, he had recovered the majority of his strength and abilities thanks to the boy's unknowing assistance. In contrast to the gentle energies that once flowed in the elemental plane, the boy's ethereal energies were surprisingly powerful because of their condensed state. He would return to full strength in a few months. He might even advance to the next level of power if he kept taking in the boy's ethereal energies. He owed the boy too much to keep the truth from him. Maybe soon, he told himself, he would tell the boy about the guardians who used to keep the world safe, of that shattered past. After 5 months, Wave Country Naruto was filled with horror as he gazed at Sasuke's body. Ice and bonds protruded from Sasuke's body, and the black-haired boy simply lay motionless on the ground. His Genin team's C-rank mission had not gone well. They were meant to visit the home of an elderly bridge builder, but instead they were forced to fight a strong merchant who had dispatched an A-rank missing ninja and his apprentice who wielded ice to deal with Team 7. Kakashi had gone off to deal with one Zabuza, the A-rank missing nin. The apprentice, who appeared to be incapable of using ice techniques, was supposed to be dealt with by Sasuke and Naruto. He had used destructive attacks on Sasuke and Naruto while they were imprisoned inside a dome of ice mirrors. It had always seemed to Naruto that Sasuke was a jerk who only cared about himself. However, when Naruto was unable to avoid a hail of Senbon needles, Sasuke had been standing in front of him. Sasuke lay motionless in front of Naruto after using his body to protect him from that attack. Not breathing. Deceased. When Team 7 first came across the 2 missing nins, they all decided not to give up on the mission. It simply never occurred to Naruto that one of them would die during this futile mission. Naruto's emotions stirred into a dark turmoil as grief overtook him and a slow, burning rage spread through his body. He would exact revenge. He glared at the masked ninja concealed inside the ice mirror. His anger surged to new heights, and he released red chakra tendrils from his body. Inside Uzumaki Naruto's body, the boy and his Genin team had never left Konoha on a mission before. He had sucked the boy's ethereal essence back into his main self, which was housed in the elemental ore back in the boy's apartment, while remaining a silent observer inside the boy's body. When the young Team 7 had first come across the formidable missing nin Zabuza at the beginning of their adventure, he had experienced the first twinge of unease. When Zabuza was on the verge of losing, a hunter nin intervened, apparently killing Zabuza and removing his body. When his senses detected the subtle presence of his sister Shiva, the elemental goddess of ice within the hunter nin, he had received the first shock of his new life. He had chosen to watch the situation a little longer before taking action, even after Team 7 unanimously decided to proceed with the mission after the old bridge builder had disclosed why the missing nin was pursuing him and how he could not afford to pay for a higher grade mission. The moment was approaching to tell young Naruto the truth because his core essence had already been returned to its previous level of strength prior to the elemental plane breaking. As soon as the group arrived in Wave Country, Team 7's Jonin teacher, Kakashi, put them through a series of training exercises to get the young Genin ready for what lay ahead. Naruto had unintentionally run into the hunter nin in her bare face once more during a solitary training session. The girl had become friends with Naruto after introducing herself to the boy as Haku. He had seized the opportunity to perform a thorough magical scan on the girl, revealing that she was actually a human child of Shiva, a formidable elemental goddess in the past. He didn't know how Shiva had mated with a human, but the girl's existence demonstrated that Shiva had survived the world's destruction. He just needed to find out where she was now. He had planned to tell Naruto about himself the next day. He had not anticipated Team 7 being attacked by a masked Haku and a recovered Zabuza. When Haku imprisoned Naruto and his teammate Sasuke in a dome of ice mirrors, she disclosed her ice elemental ancestry. Then, Haku had knocked Sasuke down. The Uchiha appeared to be dead, but his magical scan revealed that he was actually in a deep sleep-like state. Unfortunately, that appeared to cause Naruto a great deal of grief and rage. Raw tendrils of tailed beast chakra swept through Naruto's body, startling him. He felt pain as the raw, tailed beast chakra came into contact with and devoured pieces of his essence inside Naruto. He needed to move quickly before the boy's essence was completely destroyed. He addressed a living human being directly for the first time since the world broke. Bridge in Wave Country without a name Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto was startled out of his rage by the deep-pitched voice that echoed inside his head. "Listen to me. Sasuke Uchiha is still alive." "What?" Naruto exclaimed, startled, and turned to see who had said it. Except for the masked ninja hiding in the ice mirrors and Sasuke lying motionless on the floor, nobody else was in the area. "He is still alive, but if you lose this battle, that could change." The voice went on. "If you let me access your chakra, I can assist you, and to satisfy my one wish." Naruto repeated, "Who are you?" with a distinctly uneasy feeling. "Someone who, if you accept it, can assist." This time, Naruto's uneasiness vanished as the voice spoke, to be replaced by a serene assurance that whoever it was meant no harm to Naruto. Naruto might have recognized that his feelings of trust for an unfamiliar voice in his head were a little out of character if he had had more time to reflect. However, he was currently engaged in a conflict that he was most likely unable to prevail in. He could only take whatever assistance was provided because he didn't have time to consider the situation carefully. Naruto uttered the desperate words, "I accept it. Just help me." The ninja concealed in the ice mirrors watched him with interest. "Then call me Naruto Uzumaki. Call me." Images of graying skies, rolling thunder, and flashing lightning filled his mind as he heard the voice. The power of storms, the unadulterated force rushing through the skies. Naruto somehow knew exactly what to say without being told. Naruto screamed, "Help me! Quetzalcoatl, elemental guardian of storms, guardian of the skies." As a tremendous amount of blue-green chakra erupted from his chakra points and wrapped around his body, enclosing him in a huge and potent chakra shroud. Bridge in Wave Country without a name Haku had no desire to murder. However, Zabuza was her entire world, and he had given her the order to look after Team 7's two genin. In an attempt to deter the blonde-haired boy from carrying out his pointless attacks, she had decided to use her senbons to put Sasuke into a near-death condition. Thus, she was taken aback when sickly red chakra tendrils encircled the boy. The chakra abruptly disappeared as the boy started yelling into the air, as if he were speaking to an invisible person. Haku had no words to describe what followed. The boy suddenly released a strong blue-green chakra that swirled around his body. Haku had an innate ability to sense chakras, and from the strong chakra blast, she was able to detect the imminence of a storm, the smell of burnt air as lightning flashed across the sky, and the scent of an ancient being, surrounded by immense protection and radiance. Haku, who was hidden in her ice mirror, watched with fear as young Naruto's form started to change, with chakra encircling him and taking on the appearance of a big green bird-like creature with lightning arcs running through its skin. Even though the creature was majestically hovering above the ground, its eyeless head turned to face the real her inside the ice mirrors. "My name is Quetzalcoatl, protector of the sky and storms." Haku winced in agony as a voice boomed loudly inside her head. The voice in the mind was undoubtedly that of the creature that young Naruto had transformed into. Haku was starting to feel as though she had taken on more than she could handle, and flashes of uncertainty and anxiety were starting to surface in her feelings. "Shiva's child. You have been judged for what you did to my summoner." The voice went on. Haku stiffened, ready to escape into other ice mirrors if necessary, using her ice techniques. When the creature hovered in the air and exploded giant lightning bolts. As she was thrown out of the ice mirror, strong electricity flowed through her body as the lightning bolts broke all of her ice mirrors. As she flew through the air, her body jerked and spasmed uncontrollably before colliding forcefully with the ground below. In the fog around it, she watched through leaden eyes as the creature continued to release the mother of all lightning bolts. Haku struggled to stand up and whispered, "Zabuza," through dry and cracked lips. "Zabuza, I am sorry." As she passed out, darkness enveloped her vision. She never heard Sakura and the bridge builder's horrified cries as Quetzalcoatl's magnificent flying form faded and changed back into one Uzumaki Naruto, nor did she see the fog start to clear. Bridge in Wave Country without a name Kakashi was beginning to worry. Zabuza was excellent at too excellent. He would have prevailed in a matter of minutes if this conflict with the missing nin had occurred a few years ago. However, he had allowed his combat abilities to deteriorate to mediocrity following the war, the fourth Hokage's defeat, and particularly Rin's passing, his final link to Konoha. He had been living in a state of aimlessness, occasionally covering his expanses with B-ranked missions. Perhaps sensing Kakashi's sorrow over the death of his loved ones, the third Hokage had abandoned him for a few years until the old man finally had enough and made Kakashi join his first genin team. The old man had repeatedly failed all of the genin teams he tested, and Kakashi knew it was his attempt to re-establish a connection with Konoha. Up until the 7th team. The news that Uchiha Sasuke would be studying under Sharingan Kakashi had thrilled many of the council members. Team 7 would undoubtedly be headed for greatness in the future with Sharingan Kakashi of 1,000 techniques leading a group of the final Uchiha. Up until he faced Zabuza in a botched C-rank mission. Even Kakashi had been swept up in all that excitement and had benefited from the boost in morale. Kakashi used to have little trouble defeating an A-rank missing nin. But now he was hardly able to compete with the missing nin. Kakashi's struggle was made more difficult by the fog that Zabuza had summoned, which obscured the missing nin from view. A strong chakra presence swept through the area as Kakashi pulled out a scroll and prepared to call forth his ninja dogs. Despite not being a chakra sensor, Kakashi was able to recognize the type of chakra source thanks to his elemental affinity. There was lightning, untamed and wild, and now it was blazing through the fog with great force. There were loud thuds of bodies, followed by several cries of pain in the fog. Kakashi briefly feared for his students. Was this some kind of secret tactic Zabuza was planning? The fog then dissipated. The sight of an unconscious Zabuza on the ground a few feet ahead of Kakashi had caused his eyes to widen. When he saw a big green bird-like creature hovering over an unconscious Sasuke in the distance, he turned his head and gaped. As Kakashi was ready to rush to Sasuke's aid, the flying creature was surrounded by swirls of blue-green chakra that faded and changed into Naruto? Kakashi watched in disbelief as Naruto's lifeless body fell to the ground next to Sasuke. As he hurried forward to see how his students were doing, Sakura's shrill cries were what startled him out of his daze. In a mindscape he appeared in what appeared to be a classroom full of students and a very serious-looking woman, but no one could see him. As the woman turned to teach her class, images appeared on the screen and flashed in front of her. As pictures of weird creatures using strong chakra techniques filled the screen, the woman said, "Now everyone, this is History 101. The first thing anyone from Balam Garden must know before they become a seed." There was a huge whale-like creature summing a huge wall of water, and there was a demonic humanoid creature that could crush anything in a black ball of energy. The screen flickered across numerous other pictures of enigmatic creatures. Today we're going to touch on the Guardian Forces, the elementals that watches over the balance of the world. There's the brothers, dual Guardian Forces whose domain is over Earth. There's the Cerebus, the three-headed Guardian Force who watches over the force of magic. There are many more others, but what you need to know about the Guardian Forces is that they exist in a different plane of existence. Their real bodies lie in the elemental plane. They can only manifest part of themselves at places in our worlds with highly concentrated ethereal energies or survive in elemental ores, whether naturally formed or artificially created. Throughout the centuries, humankind have mapped out areas with high concentrations of ethereal energies. Balam Garden is in control of one such place, the summoning grounds for Ifrit, where most seeds from Balam Garden take their rite of initiation by forging a pact with the Guardian Force of Fire. To forge a pact with an elemental force, you'll need a junction system or a naturally formed elemental ore implanted in your body. This allows a Guardian Force to store part of its essence within the junction system or elemental ore, allowing you to tap into magic, other special abilities, as well as summoning them. I'll need to add a note of caution about the summoning part, however. Summoning Guardian Forces to aid you is very dangerous business, something a new summoner must never attempt without preparation. As I mentioned, Guardian Elemental Forces exists on the elemental planes. They can only manifest themselves in highly concentrated ethereal essences areas in the real world, as well as storing parts of their essence in the junction systems of those they forge a pact with. When you summon a Guardian Force, you become a channel for great magic, and are allowing great shrouds of magic to form around your body, taking on the physical appearance of the Guardian Force. You will also relinquish control of your physical body to the Guardian Force, allowing their minds to take over. Through this new form, the Guardian Force will temporarily strike out at your enemies with their powers. Summoning, however, incurs a huge strain on the human body because your very body is surrounded by high concentration of elemental magic, and is taken over by the alien minds of the Guardian Forces. A person with a weak will would easily be crushed under the powerful minds of the Guardian Forces. The physical and mental strain on one's body during the summoning is immense, forcing the summoning to end within seconds. There are even rumors that too much summoning of Guardian Forces will damage the human mind, causing memory loss, though that hearsay is still not scientifically proven. Whatever the case, just be careful. In a whirl of lights, the classroom vanished. This time, he found himself in a devastation, observing from above as a monstrous creature with 10 tails crushed and devoured hundreds of people. He could sense the terrifying intent to kill from the 10-tailed beast even though he was so far away. A green bird-like creature appeared as something flickered at the periphery of his vision. Just as he knew instinctively that what he was seeing now was the creature's memories, he also knew the creature's name. He nodded courteously to the creature hovering next to him and said, "Quetzalcoatl." "Naruto Uzumaki." The voice echoed loudly in his mind. "You have to comprehend what I'm demonstrating to you. You have to realize the agreement I made with you. The 10-tailed beast, which was created when the elemental plane was destroyed, is before you. He was the one who destroyed the planet by devouring both humans and Guardian Forces." As Quetzalcoatl revealed his memories to Naruto, his new summoner, images flashed before him. Pictures of Quetzalcoatl spending centuries hidden and imprisoned in an elemental ore before being discovered. Understanding the fate of the 10-tailed beast that Quetzalcoatl had found in this altered world, as well as the sage of the Sixth Path. Recollections of how he had finally located Naruto, the sole person capable of healing him. When Naruto spoke to the priest stone, over the years, he listened to him in silence and consoled him with empathy. How he finally came out on the bridge as Naruto was getting ready for his final confrontation with Haku. How he and Naruto had made a deal to carry out his final request. To locate his siblings who have gone missing, the remaining forces of Guardian. And Naruto had unwittingly granted that request by making a deal with Quetzalcoatl. Nevertheless, Naruto was willing to comply with Quetzalcoatl's request after witnessing his recollections of the creation of the 10-tailed beast and the hardships he had endured over the many centuries. However, Naruto was currently dealing with another issue. Naruto glared at Quetzalcoatl and said, "You could have helped sooner, before Sasuke was injured." "I had the option, but I chose not to." Admitting, Quetzalcoatl hovered softly next to Naruto. "Because it was obvious to me that the Shiva child had no desire to hurt any of you." With a frown on his forehead and a doubtful glance at Quetzalcoatl, Naruto remarked, "I still can't believe the masked nin is Haku though. Or that she's a girl. The first and last time I saw her, she insisted she's a guy. When you wake up, you will see the truth." As Naruto was flooded with revitalizing energies, Quetzalcoatl spoke. "In any case, you'll have to wake up. Zabuza and Haku will be killed by Hitaki Kakashi. I still need the child of Shiva, so please, if you can, save her. Perhaps she is the only clue that will help me find my sister, the Guardian Force of Ice." As everything around him disappeared into mist, Naruto screamed in alarm, "What do you mean Kakashi is going to kill them?" The eyes of Naruto opened somewhere on the bridge. Bridge in Wave Country without a name on the far end of the bridge, the bodies of Gato and his brigands were lying, all of them dead. Just as the Wave Village villagers, inspired by young Inari, had come to their aid, Kakashi had taken care of them. Tossing the dead bodies of those who had made their lives a living hell into the deep waters of the river was a current source of amusement for the village's men and even some of its women. Recognizing that the villagers needed to vent their rage on their tormentors, Kakashi had turned away from the scene. He had left Naruto and Sasuke in the care of Sakura and Tsunami by the bridge's edge, with an irate Inari crying as she gazed at the unconscious Naruto. He was still plagued by the mystery of what had happened to Naruto, but he could learn the answers to it in the future. He had to deal with Zabuza and his masked ninja accomplice first, though, before they woke up. He walked to where he had left Zabuza and the masked ninja tied up and pulled out a kunai. Raising his hand, he cut down at Zabuza's exposed throat. It screamed, "No!" and stopped Kakashi's blow. Kakashi noticed Naruto was awake when he turned around. The boy screamed frantically as he ran and staggered in Kakashi's direction. "No, teacher, don't do it." Everybody on the bridge had halted their activities to observe the situation. Sakura's eyes were wide with shock as she attempted to stand up after Naruto shoved her aside after his abrupt awakening at the far end of the bridge. When Naruto arrived at Kakashi's side, his newly discovered energy apparently ran out, and he collapsed to the ground. As he knelt on the ground, panting, Naruto begged, "Please Kakashi, they can no longer fight. We can just let them go." When Kakashi notices his student's state, he immediately checks Naruto's waist pulse. He learned everything he needed to know from Naruto's fast heartbeat. Your body is stressed out, it needs rest. Running all the way here in your condition and straining it isn't helping. Kakashi warned. And I have questions for you regarding what had happened. But that can wait until we get back to Tazuna's house. In the meantime, Zabuza and his accomplice need to be dealt with. We can't leave a pair of powerful ninjas at our backs. Please Kakashi, there's got to be some other way. If not, at the very least spare Hiku. Naruto began to scream. She didn't kill us when she had the chance to, and I have questions for her. Kakashi turned to face the masked ninja and asked, "Hiku?" Kakashi turned and asked, "How do you know her?" Seeing the mulish expression on Naruto's face, he realized Naruto would not respond. He sighed in exasperation and rolled his eyes. Later, he would question the boy. Meanwhile, these two enemy ninjas could be dealt with in a more difficult and time-consuming manner. He did have some free time, though, as Zabuza and this Hiku did not appear to be waking up anytime soon. Very well, I'll apply chakra restraining seals and strength sapping seals on the two of them. But I want answers, Naruto, the very instant we have some place private to talk in. Weakly, Naruto said, "Okay Kakashi." With the deaths of Zabuza and Hiku averted, Naruto collapsed onto his back next to Kakashi, his eyes shut. The boy with the blonde hair was breathing steadily as he fell asleep in a matter of moments. After a moment of staring at his most unexpected student, Kakashi shook his head and pulled out his sealing kit. He grabbed a brush and dipped it in chakra ink, then started creating strong seals on Zabuza that would both stop him from using chakra and reduce his physical prowess going forward. Wave Village's town square. The festivities continued into the evening and continued until dusk. When a group of villagers raided Gado's mansion, they found that, aside from a few easily dispatched guards, the remaining mercenaries had followed Gado to the bridge, where Kakashi had already slain them. The mansion's wealth and food were distributed among the villages, and even now, groups of villagers were bringing money and food back into Wave Village's long, empty storage houses. A few villagers would have been expected to flee with whatever wealth they could find. Years of hardship had brought them together, though, and Inari's stirring speech, which inspired them to defend their village for the first time in years, had motivated them to take action. Gado's riches, food, and treasures belonged to everyone in the village, not just one individual. The village that had endured the oppression of Gado. Team 7, Tazuna, and his entire family received hero treatment. The villagers had dragged Sakura and Sasuke to the village square, where a celebration had started, after Sasuke had woken up just before they had left the bridge. Zabuza and Hiku were imprisoned in the old village prison, which Kakashi had taken over, where they were continuously observed by a group of irate and armed villagers. The old magistrate building, which had been vacant for years, was then occupied by Kakashi. Team 7 now resides there after a group of villagers cleaned up the area. Kakashi had stayed away from the festivities, arguing that he needed to rest and keep an eye on Naruto. Tazuna was left to ensure that the villagers did not overindulge in their newfound freedom, while Tsunami and Inari stayed away from the festivities to tend to the still unconscious Naruto. In the village square, Tazuna and a few other people had set up a table to discuss the future of Wave Village and what to do with the money and materials they had taken from Gado's mansion. Sasuke was frowning off to the side, watching the villagers dance and feast. With a tense Sakura sitting next to him, Sasuke said icily for the 8th time, "Tell me again, what happened during the fight?" Sakura attempted to divert his attention by saying, "Sasuke, we should get something to eat." However, she was met with a glare from him and withered. Dejectedly, she started recounting what she had witnessed during the altercation on the bridge. "Well, I could only hear fighting at first. The fog hid everything. Then there was this powerful presence. Giant bolts of lightning pierced through the fog. People were crying in pain. I heard bodies hitting the ground. Then the fog cleared. The masked ninja and Zabuza were lying unmoving on the ground, and there was this large green bird-like creature with no eyes, flying over your body. After that, the bird creature just changed into Naruto, who dropped to the ground beside you." Sakura spoke with continued disbelief when Sasuke kept asking her to reiterate what she had witnessed. "And then?" continued Sasuke. "Gado came with his mercenaries. Kakashi managed to kill all of them. He was saying he was still close to full strength, since he hadn't used any powerful techniques against Zabuza yet. Then Naruto woke up when Kakashi was going to kill Zabuza and the masked ninja and stopped him from doing that. Naruto fainted again while Kakashi applies seals on Zabuza and the masked ninja." Sakura said, gnashing her teeth when she noticed the dark expression on Sasuke's face. Shortly after that, you woke up. Sasuke grunted and gritted his teeth as he rose from his seat, saying, I woke up after Naruto had somehow transformed into a powerful creature that managed to disable Zabuza and the masked ninja. I woke up after everything is over. Leaping, he landed on the closest rooftop. I need to get stronger. I need to get stronger. Sakura watched in disbelief as Sasuke sprinted away without turning around. Sakura considered pursuing Sasuke for a moment. However, she was exhausted from everything that had transpired, particularly from the way Sasuke had spent the last few hours questioning her about the battle. Furthermore, she had serious doubts that she could keep up with Sasuke at his current level. She rose and went to a table that was laden with food. With any luck, Sasuke would avoid too much trouble. However, she was currently too exhausted to give a damn about her sentimental prince, who did not even return her feelings. In a mindscape, a group of monsters confronted the three seeds. 5 magical spells of arrow were extracted from the monsters and stored in the girl's body as she waved her hands, drawing on the strength of the guardian forces that resided in her junction system. Arrow is a magical spell that lets you unleash a strong wind blast. Because of her connection to the guardian forces, she was able to visualize what the spell actually did. Quetzalcoatl hovered beside Naruto as he stood and watched at the edge of the battlefield. Summoners who possess all guardian forces are able to draw magic from magical beings and store it in their bodies. Unlike you modern ninjas who can control magic or chakra, men did not have magic prior to the apocalypse. As he gave Naruto a closer look into the girl's Minda, one of his former summoners, Quetzalcoatl, continued to speak. Within her body, the girl organized her newly acquired collection of magical spells. She was able to store Arrow's magical spells in specific body parts through her pact with Quetzalcoatl, which enables her to regenerate considerably more quickly. She would benefit from a magical regeneration boost from the Arrow spells in those areas of her body in the upcoming battle. We will give the summoners we made a deal with additional special powers or skills, like the capacity to store magical abilities into body parts that increase strength, speed, or even luck, based on how well liked they are. After all, people are born with the capacity to influence reality through their beliefs. Guardian forces were able to manipulate the very fabric of reality to make things work in their favor by knowing which parts of a human body to empower. As Quetzalcoatl went on, Naruto was a focused pupil. I wouldn't withhold any abilities from you, Naruto. Instead, I will equip you with all of my past and present skills and abilities so that you can help me in my search for my siblings' whereabouts. Awed by the magical battle taking place before him, Naruto said, Thank you, Quetzalcoatl. But what skills or abilities will you pass me? There will be a good number of them. Quetzalcoatl laughed in his head. Guardian forces used to restrict the abilities they gave their summoners out of concern that they would abuse them. However, the world has changed, and you will need to use every power and ability I can give you in order to help me in my quest. I'll start with the skills and abilities that will be most helpful to you so as not to overwhelm you. I'll teach you how to use them before I reveal more abilities and skills. Naruto stated in a kind voice, I am taking your word for it then. All those years staying within in my body siphoning ethereal energies, I am consider your help as paying rent for it. Excellent. With a humorous tone, Quetzalcoatl spoke. I'll start by giving you access to 4 abilities. The first is the capacity to evoke the magic in other people. Additionally, I'll grant you the passive ability to increase your magic chakra skills by more than 120%. As long as my essence is inside of you, you will have much more control over your chakra and be able to use chakra techniques with greater strength. Additionally, I will grant you the card ability, which enables you to transform weak enemies into chakra or magic cards. Additionally, those magical cards can be transformed into unique items using the card modify ability. With his bewilderment already evident on his face, Naruto questioned, changing enemies to cards and changing cards to items. I'll explain when the time comes. You have to go through this yourself in order to comprehend it. With kindness, Quetzalcoatl said. The young summoner needs to be awakened. Hitaki Kakashi is starting to worry a lot. Naruto opened his eyes and nodded. Wave Village's magistrate building. For 8 days, Naruto had been unconscious, which lasted until Kakashi stopped Sasuke from going into a training frenzy. After that, he had to contend with an awake Zabuza who made every effort to get away. A few of the men from the village also tried to teach Haku some humility in one of the incidents. When the village women had learned of it, that had ended pretty suddenly. Sakura and Sasuke would alternately watch over Haku after she was bundled out of the jail and brought to the magistrate's office. For days to come, the men involved would not be able to look at any women with malice in their eyes after what the village women had done to them. Haku had been surprisingly gentle and submissive for Demon of the Mist, Zabuza's accomplice. Sakura had to persuade Kakashi to tell him the truth about Haku's employment with Zabuza. Haku had apparently escaped her father's murder after being taken in by Zabuza. The same father who, upon learning that Haku and his mother shared bloodlines, had murdered her. After the Bloodline Wars, the Land of Mist did not treat bloodline wielders well. Haku only managed to escape alive when she unintentionally killed her own father using her ice release bloodline. Haku had pledged her allegiance to Zabuza when he had taken her in and shown her kindness, leaving her broken and alone. But despite her harsh life with Zabuza, she remained kind-hearted, which is why she refrained from killing Sasuke or Naruto during the battle at the bridge. However, Zabuza's relationship with Haku was more nuanced than Kakashi initially believed. The rage he felt when Haku vanished for days after the village men took her away to teach her humility only subsided when Kakashi brought him to the prison safely. Now that he was aware of Zabuza's vulnerability, Kakashi made a deal with him, promising Haku that nothing bad would happen if Zabuza behaved well. But Kakashi wasn't sure how to handle Zabuza just yet. Returning him to Konoha would guarantee his demise. Not only do the hidden villages not like missing ninjas, but allowing such a dangerous ninja to escape was akin to allowing a wild tiger to return to haunt him. He occasionally questioned whether it was wise to listen to Naruto. Although Naruto's transformation into the strange bird-like creature that had defeated Zabuza and Haku was a major mystery, he was still too soft and inexperienced in the ninja world. Kakashi had given in when Haku offered to take care of Naruto. Haku was knowledgeable about herbs, but none of the other members of Team 7 were skilled healers. Haku had tried to feed Naruto and take care of him while Kakashi watched over him. Haku had considered herself indebted to the blonde boy after hearing from Sakura that Naruto was the sole reason she and Zabuza were still alive. By attending to Naruto's needs while he was unconscious, she attempted to pay back the debt. Although she had kept her word thus far, Kakashi was still concerned about Naruto's health. Although Naruto appeared to be in good physical condition, he stayed unconscious long enough for Tazuna to finish building the bridge. The duration of even chakra exhaustion would have been shorter. When Sakura and Haku's shocked cries brought him to Naruto's room, where the boy was just waking up, Kakashi was about to send a ninja dog back to Konoha for assistance. Naruto turned to Kakashi and whimpered as he gulped down a glass of water that Haku had given him. "I am hungry. Can I have some food?" Wave Village's magistrate building as Naruto recounted the events of that day on the bridge to Kakashi, in between mouthfuls of food. Kakashi asked incredulously, "So you're trying to tell me that you forged a pact with an ancient elemental being, who is older than the nine-tailed fox, who is older even than the legendary 10-tailed beast, and who have been living in your body for more than a year?" Naruto had asked for some privacy when Kakashi insisted on hearing his version of events on the bridge because he was unable to discuss the Guardian forces without mentioning the nine-tailed beast that was imprisoned inside of him. Sakura, an unwilling Sasuke, and Haku had been sent out of the house while they conversed because of this. Naruto's mouth was full when he said, "It's true." Quetzalcoatl had not seen the need to conceal the Guardian Foss's beginnings. The location of his elemental ore was the only thing the elemental being had warned Naruto not to share with Kakashi. "I can give you proof if you want." Given how long Naruto had been unconscious after changing into a strong flying creature, Kakashi remarked quickly, "I think we'll skip that idea. I don't want you lying on your back for the next few days because you did another of those strange transformations." With indignation, Naruto declared, "It's a summoning Kakashi. I was just lending my physical body to Quetzalcoatl because he could not manifest in the physical plane unless in special circumstances. The summoning basically involves Quetzalcoatl creating a chakra shroud around my body and taking over my mind for a brief period of time." With an angry tone, Kakashi remarked, "And if that is true, that just makes it worse. Relinquishing control of your body to some other entity. Especially your body with the nine-tailed fox contained within you. Naruto, promise me you'll not do it again until we can get some specialist ninja back at Konoha to check into this." Before his forehead wrinkled in bewilderment, Naruto stated, "I've been telling you, Kakashi, that Quetzalcoatl and his siblings are the enemies of the tailed beasts. Quetzalcoatl is a guardian force. They watch over the balance of the world. Or they used to. Now Quetzalcoatl isn't even sure if the rest of his siblings are alive, even if Haku is really the descendant of Shiva, the ice elemental. Let's say I believe you, Naruto. That you really forged a pact with an elemental being that suddenly appeared to your rescue. You will need to take its words with a grain of salt. You can't believe everything it said," Kakashi said with a serious face. "The stories it told you might not be totally true. We'll need the researchers back at Konoha to look into this just to make sure there are no adverse consequences of forging a pact with the creature. Kakashi, your teacher, is smart to be wary of the unknown. Naruto's annoyance was broken by Quetzalcoatl's approving statement. He and I cannot have mind.to. Mind communication. I can't show him what I remember. Don't criticize him for being afraid of the unknown. Reaching out with the new ability Quetzalcoatl had given him, Naruto said, well, I can also show you the rest of the skills and abilities Quetzalcoatl gave me, to prove he exists. The capacity to conjure magic spells from a magical creature or source. Kakashi meets the requirements for a magical creature because of his ability to use chakra. He touched Kakashi's chakra core with his newly developed senses. 5 distinct colors glinted in the chakra core. Naruto stopped when he saw it. You are currently viewing Hitaki Kakashi's chakra core, which has been divided into spells that represent his actual essence. Hitaki Kakashi possessed 5 different kinds of magical spells, as indicated by the colors. You'll know what they are once you've sketched them. Quetzalcoatl was suggested. After a moment of hesitation, Naruto pulled and used his newly developed senses to touch one of the colors. Kakashi glared at Naruto and blinked. What did you do, Naruto? My chakra just spiked up. However, Naruto was absorbed in the unexpected information that hit him. 6. There have been drawings of mimic magic. Mimic is a magical spell that enables one to instantly replicate any target's magical technique. Naruto, there's more for you to know. Breaking through his thoughts, Quetzalcoatl warned. The magical aspect of the creature through which the spell was drawn is actually strengthened each time you draw magic spells from it. Because of this, people used to cast spells on monsters and then kill them right away to stop them from getting stronger. In certain instances, a monster that has drawn too much magic from humans has grown too strong to be stopped by regular people. And you're just now telling me that? I also can't murder Kakashi? He's not a monster. Even as he felt the 6 spells take hold of his body, Naruto snarled back in his inner voice. He returned his focus to Kakashi, who was now giving him a menacing glare. Kakashi grunted, Naruto, what did you just do? Naruto put down the bread he was holding and turned to face Kakashi. I told you about the draw magic ability I got from Quetzalcoatl, didn't I? He asked. Well, I have just drawn 6 mimic spells from you. Apparently the more I draw on the magic, or in this case, the chakra of someone, the more powerful the person will get in that aspect of magic I am drawing in. Magic is actually chakra. Which means since the mimic spell is a magic that allows anyone to copy a magical technique of a target, I most probably drawn that magic out of you because of your Sharingan. Kakashi narrowed his eyes and asked, really? The tea from the teapot rose into a small water dragon, or in this case, a tea dragon, and Kakashi's hands flicked into a quick series of hand seals, saying, you'll have to prove that, wouldn't you, Naruto? Copy this? Pulling a magic spell from his stash, Naruto used it. He was empowered by an odd chakra that was blazing in his eyes. He was looking at the water dragon when all of a sudden he knew how to perform it in its hand seals. As if he had been practicing for years, his hands moved in hand seals for the tea dragon. His chakra was used precisely, and as he struggled with the tea dragon, Kakashi had called out. Another tea dragon swirled out of the teapot. Kakashi looked impressed and raised an eyebrow. As he let go of the tea dragon and watched as Naruto followed suit, Kakashi declared, that's enough. The tea swirled back into the teapot. That's enough proof for me. You couldn't have known the technique for the water dragon, and the only way you can execute it perfectly on first attempt is if you have a Sharingan of your own. Since you didn't, it is proof enough of this so-called magic of yours. Naruto complained before becoming happier, saying, great, and I just wasted a perfectly good magic spell just to prove to you. Though I did get a cool technique in exchange. Kakashi appeared distressed as he spoke. If what you said is true, about the guardian forces, the tailed beasts, and the new powers and abilities you now have through the pact, I can very well imagine the trouble that will come if this news, even the news of your new abilities, is leaked out to other hidden villages. Power is the coin of currency in hidden villages. Your new abilities, strange and powerful as they are, will be a threat. The other hidden villages will seek to make those powers theirs, and failing that, ensure Konoha does not have access to this power, even if they have to destroy it. Naruto, you have to understand that your new gifts are a double-edged sword. You must not reveal any of this to anyone else until we can talk to the Hokage. Naruto nodded and said, all right. Despite his youth and bravado, he was not a moron. Years of living alone and occasionally surviving on the streets had taught him a valuable lesson, despite his desire for attention and approval. Avoid attracting too much attention, especially unfavorable attention. Inquisitive, Naruto extended his newly developed senses once more and touched a magic he had not yet extracted from Kakashi. He gave a pull. Kakashi recoiled in surprise. Kakashi yelled, Naruto, what did you just do? 8 white chakra blade spells. Naruto exhaled, his eyes wide as he began to absorb the new spell's details. He extended his hand and used one of the spells. He clenched the table in front of him with a long white chakra blade, and Kakashi and Naruto immediately leapt away from one another. Kakashi's face was turning gray with shock as he stared at the white chakra blade in Naruto's grasp, while Naruto was staring at his hands in horror. The white chakra blade in Naruto's hand flickered out and vanished into thin air after a few stunned seconds. Kakashi snapped out of his shock and blinked his eyes. He turned to face Naruto, who continued to gaze at the ruined table. Naruto was about to say, "I didn't mean to do that, honestly," when Kakashi interrupted him with a hand gesture. "Right now I am more interested in the how of you drawing these magic, chakra spells from other people. Do different people have different spells? And how do you determine what spell to pull from someone?" Kakashi replied with a firm tone. "Each magical creature has a unique core. The creature's core reveals who they really are, and this core may evolve as a result of the various experiences and feelings they have throughout their lives." In Naruto's mind, Quetzalcoatl said, "Share this with your teacher. The spells you can cast on him are simply reflecting who he really is at this point in his life. In the future, everything might be different. Should you persist in casting more spells on him, he will grow increasingly strong in the magical domains you are targeting." Kakashi glared down at Naruto and said, "Naruto, I am waiting." Naruto had never seen Kakashi so irritated, and the older man somewhat scolded him. Naruto repeated what Quetzalcoatl had said, saying, "Well, Quetzalcoatl said that one of those long days was ahead of us." Wave Village's magistrate building. Kakashi treated Sasuke like a glorified babysitter by first waking Naruto and then sending him out with Sakura and Haku to stroll the village while he spoke to Naruto. Sasuke, however, would not have it that way. Naruto had slipped away from Sakura and Haku with a flimsy excuse that he doubted the two girls believed because the question of how he had defeated Zabuza and Haku had been bothering him for the past few days. He was meant to protect Haku, of course, but the girl was already fitted with strength, sapping and chakra. Restraining seals. Given that they were strolling down a crowded, busy village street, Sakura and the other villagers could likely ensure she didn't get away. Sasuke then went back to the magistrate building, which is where Team 7 currently resides. He crept over to the side of the wall where Naruto's room was and gingerly opened a few of the windows to listen in on the conversations going on inside. Stories about guardian forces, elemental beasts, and the fact that Naruto was the nine-tailed fox's demon container. It all clarified the hostility the Konoha villagers had always appeared to have toward Naruto. It also described how Naruto acquired his amazing abilities. Since the white-haired ninja did not appear to be aware that Sasuke was outside a window listening in, Kakashi must have been trapped in similar feelings of shock and disbelief. After that, Naruto demonstrated his white chakra blade and mimic spells, both of which he had somehow borrowed from Kakashi. Such a bare demonstration of power had left Sasuke speechless. This power must belong to him, Uchiha Sasuke. If Naruto ever wanted to exact revenge on his murderous brother, he had to have this power. After that, Naruto started to describe how he used other people's magic. How a person's power in the magical aspect Naruto was drawing from increased with the number of spells he used on others. In actuality, the relationship was symbiotic in both directions. Maybe Kakashi had finally noticed Sasuke by the windows, or maybe it was the quiet gasp from his lips. In any event, the windows were abruptly flung open, and Sasuke gazed in disbelief into Kakashi's irate face. "How much did you overheard?" Kakashi said with a grim voice as he glared at Sasuke. The look on Sasuke's face must have said it all because Kakashi gave an angry growl as he pointed a finger at Sasuke. "This is an order from me as leader of Team 7. Do you understand that you are not to tell anyone a word of what you have heard in this room?" The only thing Sasuke could do was nod stupidly, barely keeping his knees from shaking at Kakashi's intent to kill. "Sasuke, I am disappointed in you. Did you not leave Sakura to keep watch over Haku by herself? If Haku tried anything, if Sakura is hurt, I will make sure you answer for it," Kakashi said, his lips twisted grimly at Sasuke's nod. "Sasuke, enter the room immediately. We'll talk more later." Naruto makes sure Sasuke doesn't do anything foolish. Before jumping out and racing across the rooftops to find Sakura and Haku, Kakashi waited until Sasuke clambered through the window into the room. The room fell into an awkward silence as the two boys watched Kakashi vanish into the distance. Then, with a determined expression on his face, Sasuke turned to Naruto. "Naruto, tell me how I can acquire your abilities." With his intense gaze fixed on Naruto, Sasuke said, "Tell me how I can make a pact with this Quetzalcoatl. Unless you can find a junction system or an elemental ore to implant into your body, it is not possible." When Naruto realized what he was going to say, he stammered, "I am special because..." I don't give a damn about the fact that I already know you're the nine-tailed fox's container. Just tell me how I can get an elemental ore or a junction system, exasperated Sasuke said, determined to get more power for his retaliation no matter what. As if listening to a voice in his head, Naruto frowned and explained, well, elemental ores are what is known as chakra gems in the elemental countries. They are horribly expensive though, since they are very hard to find. After telling Kakashi this, Sasuke began to suspect that the idiot was deluded. As for junction systems, the elemental countries do not have the technologies to build artificial elemental ore, Naruto said. Depending on whether we can locate the necessary resources, creating junction systems from scratch could take weeks, months, or even years. Chakra jewels. In an excited tone, Sasuke remarked, I am aware of chakra gems. They are embedded in a number of the heirlooms in the Uchiha compound. So I can make a deal with Quetzalcoatl if I put one of the gems in my body? Well, I guess. Quetzalcoatl stated that he would accept the pact if a chakra gem was placed in your body as payment for rescuing me from Haku's attack back on the bridge, but Naruto said this somewhat reluctantly, as if he were a little put off by the idea of disclosing his own special summon. He will only give you the bare minimum of his skills and abilities. He will not, however, give you all of them. As your relationship deepens and his trust in you grows, you will be given more. Based on his current observations, he says you have serious Psi. Whatever that means, chapathic issues. Until you demonstrate that you won't misuse them, he simply doesn't feel comfortable giving you more authority. Thank you Quetzalcoatl for giving me this pact, Sasuke said in a fiercely serious tone, clutching Naruto's hands tightly while gazing into Naruto's shocked eyes. I will just have to prove myself to him then. You won't regret it. You will never have a more potent summoner than me. Whatever Quetzalcoatl had said, Naruto did not share it with Sasuke, who held Naruto's gaze for a few awkward seconds before the blonde boy simply shook his head and left. It must have been something that Quetzalcoatl said to Naruto because the blonde boy tilted his head to the side before frowning at Sasuke. After cutting his table in half with a white chakra blade spell, Naruto said, Come on Sasuke, help me clear out this mess. He started to clean up the food that had spilled on the floor, stating that Kakashi might be in a better mood if he didn't have to deal with a dirty room when he gets back. Wave Village's magistrate building. After Uchiha Sasuke left, Haku did consider leaving the village and saving Zabuza from the village prison. Of Team 7, Haruno Sakura was the least dangerous. She could potentially disable the girl with her taijutsu alone, even without access to her chakra and her diminished strength, but during the days she had spent with the girl, she had developed a friendly relationship with Sakura that was less that of a jailer and more like a friendship. Sakura had been thrilled to find a female ninja of her age, and during her time at the magistrate building, Sakura had no choice but to listen to the pink-haired girl converse. At first, Haku had thought the girl's conversations were useless because Sakura treated being a ninja as if it were a game. Instead, she concentrated all of her attention on attracting the attention of one Uchiha Sasuke, the pink-haired girl's fantasy prince. However, there were hidden depths to the air-headed girl, and somehow, through deft conversational manipulation, Sakura had managed to get Haku to open up to someone other than Zabuza. It had been years since Haku had a female friend, and Sakura's simple friendship had led Haku to recognize the girl as another one of her precious people, and she would never harm any of her precious people. After that, Haku and Sakura wandered the streets of Wave Village together, and the people were kind to the two girls. Everyone in Wave Village looked up to Team 7, including Sakura, as heroes. Haku was treated with respect because, aside from caring for Naruto, she had been making herbal remedies for a number of other ailing villagers for the past few days and helping the women of Wave Village gather the best herbs to make the strongest herbal extracts. That was it. Only half of the village had been explored before Kakashi had materialized beside them in a tangle of leaves. The white-haired man appeared extremely agitated and frustrated as he led the two girls back to the magistrate building, where Haku was met by a gleeful Naruto who had reprimanded her for allowing him to believe she was a girl. The strong blonde boy appeared to have forgotten that just over a week prior, he and Haku had been engaged in a serious battle that could have resulted in either of their deaths. Naruto had just continued, striking up small talk in an attempt to learn more about the girl he had met in the flower fields. After giving Team 7 instructions to watch over Haku, Kakashi left to take care of some business and didn't return until after dark. As Team 7 went to bed, one of them took a rotating watch every few hours, and Sakura had to bind Haku apologetically. Haku's eyes had brightened at the sight of her most precious person, the one who had taken her in when no one else had wanted her, the one who had taken care of her and treated her with kindness in his rough, seemingly uncaring way. The following morning, Haku woke up on the couch, stiff from the rope bindings on her hands and legs. She had known something was happening when Kakashi had untied her and called Team 7 together, just as Tazuna, the bridge builder, walked in with several armed men who herded and untied Zabuza in front of them. Although Tazuna and his men did not appear surprised by the news, Kakashi had shocked his team by announcing, Team 7 will be returning to Konoha this very morning. There's the matter of what to do with Zabuza and Haku, however. They would immediately be put to death if we brought them back to Konoha, and it would be a waste of Naruto and my efforts to save their lives if Konoha killed them without warning. One of the peasants thrust a pike in front of Zabuza's face as he snarled angrily, his untied hands already in motion. Kakashi nodded to Tazuna and stated, I've talked to Tazuna and we've decided what to do with you two. After turning to face Zabuza, Tazuna said, Wave Village would like to hire the two of you to protect our village. Haku was stunned into silence by what he said next. What? Gazing at the elderly bridge builder he had once attempted to murder, Zabuza uttered the words incredulously. Gado's entire fortune has been appropriated by us. It doesn't take much to figure out that some of Gado's dishonest associates might visit Wave Village and use whatever force is required to reclaim these riches. As he looked at Zabuza, who had started to laugh, Tazuna declared resolutely, We are willing to pay highly for your protection, Zabuza, because none of us want to be without protections again after the oppression Wave Village had endured at the hands of Gado. Zabuza scoffed at Tazuna and said, And what makes you think I wouldn't just take that wealth from you? Because those wealth are now separated into various secret accounts tied to Wave Village, Tazuna said, unfazed by Zabuza's words or actions. To access the funds, certain parties must be present or consent. Hitaki Kakashi, a current village trustee, is one of the parties. Hitaki Kakashi will have the power to distribute the money in the event that the other members of the Wave Village Council pass away. We have faith that he will consider Wave Village's interests. Gazing at Tazuna, Zabuza said incredulously, He is a Konoha nin, his only interest is to Konoha. With a steely voice, Tazuna remarked, and yet he and his team offered to save Wave Village, even when we only paid for a C-rank mission. We trust Kakashi, Zabuza. Wave Village is prepared to pay 150,000 ryo a month for your and Haku's services. More if we are attacked. Additionally, I'm willing to overlook your previous attempt to murder me. Zabuza, will you accept these terms? After a lengthy period of silence, Zabuza shrugged his wide shoulders and said, I'll take it. It's preferable to passing away in Konoha. I assume that this agreement is exclusive to the people present in this room. That's right, we can't just go around telling everyone that Wave Village has a missing nin working for it as a guard. Once Team 7 has departed, you will appear to the public to have escaped with Haku. Accommodations have already been prepared for you, and the village council will pay you on a monthly basis. In the forest is an old woodcutter's cabin. Tazuna moved forward and handed Zabuza a thick envelope, saying, We have fixed and furnished it so you can move in at any time. We are also returning what should be yours. When Zabuza opened the envelope and saw the wad of cash inside, he trailed off, What? Tazuna turned to face Haku, who was gaping at the scene in front of her, and said, I think that was the amount Gado promised for killing me and Team 7. You two may have failed in your mission for Gado, but Wave Village will honor that debt. In any case, the money is rightfully yours both. This time, Zabuza gave Tazuna a respectful look, but his mouth twisted as he shoved the money envelope into his pockets. I may be a missing nin, but I also have my own honor. Wave Village will remain under my protection as long as I take payment from them, and I've promised you that. Good. Then I'll hold you to it. Kakashi approached Haku and touched the seals that restrained her chakra and sapped her strength, which started to fade and vanish. She felt her chakra and strength return a few moments later. Kakashi then went to stand by Zabuza's side and did the same to him, stretching his arms several times as though to relax tense muscles. Team 7 will now depart for Konoha. You and Haku will be returned to your cells, Zabuza. Emerge in the night's darkness. The rest should be easy for you to figure out on your own. Sasuke just stood a distance away, glaring at the girl who had turned him into a pincushion, while Sakura had wrapped Haku in an embrace and Naruto had vowed to return to see her again. Zabuza nodded curtly to Kakashi and then turned away. As the armed men rounded up Zabuza and Haku and started binding them, Tazuna said, Okay, time to go. We're going to put on a show when we march you all back to prison, so act the part. Words cannot express how grateful Wave Village is to you all, Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. When you depart, the villagers will be waiting at the bridge to bid you farewell. Additionally, Wave Village wants to give each of you the gifts I gave Kakashi. I know that when you get to Konoha, Kakashi will give them to you. I hope you have the best possible time and return to see us someday. Naruto grinned and said, We will, old man. As Tazuna and his men started to march Haku and Zabuza out of the magistrate building, Sakura remarked, "Yes, we'll definitely come back one day." Before leaving, Haku turned to give Team 7 one final wave. The woods close to the land of waves. Kakashi was hoping to make good on their timing, trying to reach Konoha within 3 days, and he was pushing Team 7 hard, and it was not too much of a guess for Naruto to realize that the reason was probably him, or more accurately, Quetzalcoatl, who resides in Naruto's body. After saying goodbye to the villagers, Team 7 was traveling at top speed over the tops of trees, crossing the nearly finished bridge back into mainland, and then having to water walk a short distance towards the mainland before skimming over the trees. As he spoke with the elemental force inside of him, Naruto was currently bringing up the group's rear. "So you found Shiva's location?" Naruto asked in his mind. Quetzalcoatl had been silent the entire previous evening when he performed a powerful magical analysis of Haku while Naruto was chatting with the girl. Due to the chaos that characterized this morning, Naruto had not had time to ask Quetzalcoatl where he was until now. In a sense, Quetzalcoatl's voice said in Naruto's mind, "My magic has already picked up that connection, so once you're able to leave the village to help me search for her, I will be able to guide you to Shiva's location." I was finally able to locate and tap into the metaphysical connection that binds Haku to Shiva due to their shared bloodlines, and I was able to determine that my sister is indeed alive, though her essence seemed weak and that she was in some sort of slumber. "That's great." Naruto agreed. "When we return to Konoha, I'll try to persuade Kakashi to grant me a few days off from the village. I've been meaning to inquire. Can I use the magical analysis you performed on Haku to determine what magic spells I can cast on a human?" Quetzalcoatl acknowledged that it could be used in that manner, but casting such a magical scan takes time, and it's usually quicker to just draw the magic from a person so I can sample it and tell you what the magic spell does. Naruto recalled Kakashi's firm briefing outside the magistrate building before they left, saying, "Well, Kakashi gave me strict instructions before we left, not to draw out any magic from anyone else for the time being. I didn't tell him I've already drawn spells from Sasuke and Sakura while he was away the previous night," Naruto admitted. Sakura had been his unknowing target of spell drawing, and it had been an eye-opener when he had drawn out 2 powerful spells from her. A spell called Physical Manifestation of Alternate Self, that somehow summoned the darker side of oneself, and a spell called Quake, that could cause a localized earthquake. While Sasuke was a willing participant in Naruto's magic drawing experiment, Naruto was curious about the spells he had not yet drawn from Kakashi. "So, Quetzalcoatl, do you think you can find out what other spells I can draw from Kakashi?" Naruto had drawn Mimic spells from the boy, Blaze spells that could summon a blaze of fire, and Lightning spells that could cast lightning on a target. "I can do that. Give me a few minutes," Quetzalcoatl said, nodding mentally. In the ensuing mental quiet, Naruto took in his surroundings as he followed his team, racing through the treetops. When Quetzalcoatl spoke up, magical analysis was finished. Hatake Kakashi currently possesses 5 different magical aspects. The White Chakra Blade and Mimic spells can be drawn from him, while the other 3 are the Lightning Orb spell, which creates a powerful wall of water, the Dragon Flames spell, which creates fire hot enough to melt metal, and the Tidal Wave spell, which produces a powerful orb of lightning in one's hands. I can't wait to draw those spells from Kakashi. Now I just need to figure out how to get Kakashi to agree to it. That is so cool, Naruto exclaimed with a grin that split his face. Naruto was planning how to use his newly discovered powers to draw more potent spells as Team 7 raced through the treetops.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.